Welcome to the Neophyte in the Woods podcast with Andrew McDowell.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Neophyte in the Wood podcast, a proud member of the Change Your POV podcast network. This week, we are joined by my good friend, Mr. Jeffrey Adamec.
Hey ho, hey ho.
How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing, buddy?
You know what? It's not 3 degrees outside anymore. I'm warm for the first time since Christmas, so I'm doing great.
You know what? That's a good point. It was above 20 degrees today here in North Carolina, so we're all getting hit with it, I think.
Isn't it always above 20 degrees in North Carolina?
Most of the time it is. I think this is the coldest it's been for the longest time period it's been.
Really?
Ever in over 20 years of me being here.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
We definitely hit a record low up here in Boston just recently, but that's not unusual for us.
You guys hit a record low. Is that even a bigger record low than Bucky fucking Dent? Because I thought that guy was your record low.
That's mean.
That's
No.
a Yankees fan for you, buddy. I'm throwing him at you.
You see, the actual joke, considering the Patriots are in the running for the Super Bowl this year, would be the actual low was the catch that wasn't a catch in that Super Bowl against the Giants.
What? Come on, man. That thing is. Don't even start that crap. That catch has been looked at by more friggin' people, and even Rodney Harrison said that was a catch.
Yeah.
And he was right there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it went right over his head, didn't it? Yeah. The whole what is a catch and what is not a catch is completely confusing to me now. So I don't think anybody really knows what it is.
Yeah, it's well, I don't think, and that's the problem. I don't think the referees know what it is.
No. And, that's actually a pretty decent segue into what we're going to talk about this week. The folks who tuned in and are listening to the show have already heard me give a little summary of my deer season, which resulted in abject failure. Not in a completely negative light, but I didn't bring home any deer. So, obviously the topic of this episode, for anybody who can read and has read the title of it, is failure, the view from the canvas. And I know that, Jeff, you have spoken at length to people and have a kind of a seminar on among other things, I'm assuming, failure and learning from failure, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's correct. I have a seminar that I give to corporate and groups of teams of people at different companies and even at schools and stuff like that on team building, developing leadership, and how to keep yourself from allowing fear of failure specifically from being allowing you to achieve and be better. So yeah, it's really weird. I'm more than just some guy that gets on this podcast and does all these historical things and jokes around. I actually have some decent stuff to put out in the world that's actually serious.
Still, I'm not going to say still waters run deep, but in your case, hyperactive jackassery waters run deep.
They do. Very deep. Very deep.
So let's start going. So I think that, one of the things that I certainly want to get your opinion on as somebody who's clearly thought about this a lot is, they call it hunting, not killing, is what I always tell myself at the end of the day when I come home without, something in my game bag or without dragging a deer behind me. But that's not the end of it. Hunting's not, they call it hunting, not killing, but also like I learn more and get more out of coming up short or failing than I think I do. I know I do, when I have a success. I think success teaches you one lesson, but failure teaches you many.
Well, success doesn't teach you anything. And this is purely my opinion. Success is a goal achieved. No lesson learned. You achieve the goal. You've got what you want. I believe success is something that is bred from failure, because you have to fail to be able to get these skills. It's the things that you succeed at have to be things worth it, and things that are worth it are only worth it because they're hard to achieve. And you cannot become someone who is going to be successful consistently until you have the knowledge that you need to be successful. That knowledge only comes from failing a lot.
And so how do you, in your opinion, get to that headspace, right? A lot of folks that I know fail at something, whether it's getting a new job or catching a pass in the Super Bowl or not having a ball go through your legs in the World Series, or something as simple as
right.
Failing to get to work on time, right?
I mean the where it's coming from is exactly the opening question you said. People who fail. No, everyone fails. Everyone, every single person that no matter how successful they are, no matter how completely perfect they look. And this is a good example. How many Super Bowl victories does Tom Brady have?
Yeah.
How many does he not have? He lost 2.
He did lose 2.
He did lose 2, but he has still got more Super Bowl wins as a quarterback. You look at him and that's a perfect quarterback. Best quarterback in the history of the NFL. Well, the best quarterback in the history of the NFL, when he was the best team in the NFL, got beat by the last team to get into the playoffs. So you think about it that way, it's everyone fails, and there's a problem with, we look at people who are successful and people who have learned to be comfortable with the failures they've had and have gone on to do things that just seem massively like nobody could stop these people. We look at them and we get a false sense of what it means to fail, and we look at ourselves like we're doing something wrong. And there is failure to the point that you're failing because you're not doing the right thing. But if you're failing because you're trying to do something and you're learning as you're doing it, that's not a failure at all. It's a learning curve to get to success. So success isn't learning anything, where failure is, like you said, teaching you all kinds of lessons. And those big failures are the best ones. And we're not talking about failing where someone gets hurt or something like that, but failing in a task or failing to achieve something that's big. If it doesn't break you, it made you. If it doesn't break you, it makes you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't get broken by that failure, you have just made leaps and bounds, because those failures that you made in that moment that were so bad, you're very likely never to make those mistakes again, because you're going to have attention to detail, hyper focus on that. And the more failures you have, the broader your knowledge gets, the more you start to look at all the little details, getting to where you got, and then you get that muscle memory, you hit that subject matter expert level, then you hit that mastery level of whatever task it is you're trying to do, and then it feels like nothing goes wrong. And then the journey ends and you get bored. So a lot of people, I tell people all the time, fear running out of failure. Because once you run out of failure, there's nothing's going to challenge you to make you want to do it anymore. But like you said, the hunting, the journey to get somewhere that's what is pleasurable about any kind of achievement. And so the hunting itself is why you go hunting. Don't forget that getting out there in the woods, you failed, but you get out there that next time. Why? Because you love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if people have the problem, once they stop love doing something, they don't want to do it anymore. That's the problem you run into when you start fearing failure.
Yeah, and I think that the people I know who are really successful and are really good at learning from failure, they get frustrated, they get discouraged, but they don't let that beat them. I think that is something that I'd love to have that have a conversation about here. Is how do you we talk briefly about people who fail and come back and learn and become subject matter experts, but it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing entirely to have the skill set that makes it possible, right? Or
Right.
the intestinal fortitude to. I'll use an example. I don't like heights. I do not like unenclosed heights, but I'm not gonna let a phobia that you know is a self-limiting kind of thing. I'm not gonna let that stop me from going 20 foot up in a tree.
Right.
And the first time I tried to use a tree stand, I got up 10 feet. I was like, yeah, this is good. And then I thought about it. I was like, well, no, it's not. This is, if I was to do, if I was only to sit here, it's not going to be a successful experience, right? I'm not conquering or overcoming anything. So then I went up 20 foot and, well, damn near killed myself falling out of the tree. But, that was a failure too. And I learned, I put myself in a place where, yep, I could fail and I could get hurt, but I'm also going to learn something about how not to fall out of a tree, how to set up the tree stand properly, how to, secure the climber that I, only used a couple of times before, how I, how to secure it, how to hang my gear so that it wasn't going to, counterweight things, and flipping the switch from accepting failure and not learning from it, took I guess you could say a sea change, a paradigm shift. And, I was wondering if you had any advice for folks out there, or had any experience or suggestions on how to embrace the, not being scared of failure, and how to,
Yeah, how to overcome
yep.
the low of
Yes,
the failure.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
here's the thing. I coached baseball for younger kids, middle school and below, for years. They're a little bit easier to mold into this because you can teach them. And what I learned in those years of doing that was that people don't want to try things they're afraid of, and parents will get upset at their children when their children are upset that they lost. And I would tell my parents all the time before we would start, I said, listen, I understand we live in a world where you want everyone to win. But if your child never learns to lose, they're never going to know why winning is so important. And that, yes, it's not okay to give up. You want to win every time you go out there, but you want to win because you don't feel good losing. But you have to lose. You have to have those failures to teach you why it feels so good to have the victories. So when you have failures over and over again, when you're learning a new task and you just can't get it right, you have to remember that every single person who has ever been the best at whatever they did at some point was as good as you are at that very moment. The only difference between them and anyone else is two things. They either just have some kind of absolute naturally given talent for it, which, believe it or not, is very, very rare. It is one of the most rarest things in the world to have a quote-unquote God-given talent. Even those guys they get there faster, but they don't just do it right away at the best level. Everyone else that they're surrounded by, who are their peers, has to work to get there. And they have to work past that moment of, man, I hate losing. I hate failing. And I'll tell you what, I am that guy. I hate losing more than I like winning, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard for guys like Mike Penny, Bennett, Eddie, myself. We're the kind of guys, there's no consoling us in that moment of loss. There's no talking to anybody. My wife, she doesn't even come out in football games or on during the season, especially this season. There's no talking to me as a Giants fan during that moment. Why I come back because I am not going to allow myself to let the failure or the fear of failing again beat my drive or my initial decision to achieve a certain level. And I tell these kids all the time while they're doing stuff, I'm like, listen, pick somewhere you want to get to and accept nothing till you get there. Accept nothing other than getting to this point. And if you don't quit, then you'll get there. And then you'll learn and you'll teach yourself that you just have to put the time in. And you don't have to put a lot of time in. It's not even like I've got to work harder. You've just got to take a look at, you have to self-evaluate after you get over the emotional loss. And the key is to accept the fact that emotional down that you feel is because you care about what you're doing. And when you stop caring that you're failing, then you are already on the road to quitting, or it's not something you want to be doing anyway. So accept the fact that you're supposed to feel bad when you fail. When it doesn't work out, this is how it's supposed to feel. This is why when I'm going to learn and get to that point, it's going to be so much better because I have to get through this. And getting through that is what makes you a success. Because you'll learn from those experiences whether or not you focus on what you did wrong. Your body and your mind will naturally just be like, hey, dummy, last time you did that, nothing went well. And it'll push you to feel like you got to adjust. And as long as you keep self-confidence, you don't have self-doubt, you won't second-guess yourself, which is one of the pitfalls of consistent failure. Second-guessing is not it. You're learning as you're going, and if you're doing the right thing. So you say, how do you get over it? Well, you take the emotional down as a